I know what you're thinking, 64 questions is a lot, but I've broken it down into 21 pages with roughly 3 to 4 questions. If you give me half an hour, 45 minutes of your time, I'll give you 15 years worth of branding experience. Sound good? In this video, we're going to break down 64 brutal questions about your brand strategy. So you can just pause it, come back to it whenever you need. But we're going to go through the deck. It looks like this. And we're just going to go from the top. Pause whenever you need. If you've not done anything like this, I promise you're going to get a lot of value out of it. Yes, some of the questions you will have heard before. That's a good thing. It's good to be reminded and good to have them absolutely dialed. And then some of the other ones might be a little bit more bespoke. They might be a little bit more nuanced, and hopefully there's some stuff you haven't heard before. I'm pretty confident there's going to be quite a few questions you've never heard before. Okay, so question 1. These are all about mission. Now, first one, I know it sounds really simple and really stupid, but it's good to go over this stuff. And I promise you, it is worth doing it in this way. So, what's the goal? Essentially, what do you want to do? What do you want to achieve? It doesn't have to be a 10-year plan. It can just be, what do you want to achieve in the next 90 days? What is the next 120 days? Most things roughly can be achieved, or at least an MVP can be launched and tested, and you can learn from the market or learn whatever you're doing. Whatever you're doing, 90 days is a good razor to kind of build through. So what do you want to achieve? What is the goal? The next question, question number 2, what do you want? And the reason why I ask those two next to each other is sometimes your goal, so to build a big old empire, and what you want, which is actually to have a family and live in the woods, those two things don't correlate very well. They might come after each other. You might want to have to build an empire for 20 years, and then your end goal is that you want to live in the woods and have loads of children. But you have to understand that your goal and what you want, often people don't realize that they're quite separate. And also, what are the stakes? So what I mean by stakes is if you're sat in your job currently right now and you want to build a brand and that requires you to maybe leave your job, I wouldn't recommend doing that if that means that the stakes are too high, because you'll be in this kind of feast, famine, scarcity mentality, and it's really hard to, it's quite a stressful environment, and cortisol isn't very good for creativity. So understand what are the stakes at play. So maybe if you can save 3 months rent, or if you can do it at weekends. A lot of great things were built in the evenings and at weekends. So what is the goal? What do you want? What are the stakes? The best way to do this, to understand the mission, by the way, is write it down. I've got these 2 docs like this. What do you want from work? What do you want from life? And I would get really dialed on this. Write it down, go over it, write it out again, and just understand what's the goal, what do you want, and what are the stakes. And that will help you craft your mission, okay? Really important you do that. Okay, next category, direction. Now, where are you now? Where do you want to go? And what's in the way? This is a classic discovery question that anybody in sales, marketing, business, or strategy will do. You probably do it in your business too. But what I've often found is that although we might be very good at asking this to clients, we're often not very good at asking this to ourselves. So, for instance, where are you now? What are your current conditions? As I say, are you doing something that you don't want to do? Are you building a brand but you want to build another? Are you trying to launch a business? Are you doing this over here but you want to be doing that over there? What are your current conditions? And then where do you want to go? As we spoke about, 120 day, 90 to 120 day plan. So let's say you currently work in a shop, but in 120 days you want to have an e-com business with a Shopify store and blah, 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 blah. Like, what is the end goal? And then what's in the way? Now, what's in the way will often look like a big obstacle that you have to kind of climb. But the easiest way to break that down is usually resources or skills, as a simple thing. So what skills are you going to have to learn? What resources do you not have that you're going to have to get thrifty about or kind of do a workaround? Or, what are your constraints and what are your abilities to execute? You might have to go off and learn some software. You might have to go off and do some things that you don't know yet. You might have to ask some people some questions. You might have to learn some stuff. You might have to read some books. Best way to do that, again, write it down. If you start with where you are and literally what you want to do, and then from where you want to be, just continue to break it down. So if you want to be, like, I want to be here in 120 days. So let's say I want to have a clothing brand. Let's just use that. So you would be like, okay, so I would need to design some clothes. I would need to understand about supply chain. I would need to get samples. I would need to find a supplier. I would need to understand about how ethical I want to be and what the resources are. I might need to read a book about design. I would need to come up with a logo. I need to come up with a name. I need to come up with some lifestyle stuff. How am I going to do some, and you just break it all down. And then each one of those things keep going to like, what can I do right now? And then that will kind of give you an ability to direct where you're going. Otherwise, anything you want to do, trust me, it can be a very amorphous, wibbly wobbly, blobbly thing. And it's very easy to get a bit overwhelmed because you're just like, oh my God, there's so much to do. There's so much to do. There's so much to do. So you want to kind of mitigate that and navigate that by writing it down, and that will help you have a little bit of a direction. And directions, that is just a strategy. That is just prioritizing which way you want to go and in what way. So really think about that. Spend a lot of time on that. Now, vision. So what's your plan to get there? We mentioned that a little bit before. What's your next move, and who are you asking to follow you? So what's your plan to get there? Going back to what I said, write that list down and then go all the way systematically to what can I do today? It might be, for instance, you might just need to tidy your studio and get rid of all the crap from your last experiment or your last business that didn't work out because you've got to get a load of stuff in. Or if it's completely not set up to do what you need to do, you might need to do that. So be careful though. I found that when you're building things or when you're trying to start new stuff, your brain has a brilliant ability to think or to prioritize things that are actually just procrastination. Like, you start a new business, you're like, right, well, I'm going to have to organize all of my pencils and pens then because that's important. But you can psych yourself up and your brain can do some weird things that makes you think that is really important. So just check that your priorities do align with your business and do align with that plan. And just always be asking yourself, like, am I procrastinating? Am I procrastinating? So what's your next move? So Patrick Bet-David did a good book called Your Next 5 Moves. Highly recommend reading that. But essentially, what's your next move? Meaning, like, what are you doing today? What are you doing tomorrow? What is on that agenda? What are those 3 things that you need to achieve today? It's just fall in love with writing lists of things you need to execute, things that you did, things that you didn't do, things that you have to carry over. Like, it can all be written. It doesn't have to be, you have to go into like productivity and get loads of apps. Just like write it on a piece of paper. I have paper everywhere, Post-it notes, systems, and they do work. You can obviously do that in digitally if it's easier, whatever. Get a notebook, get a pen, just use notes on your phone. Like, you don't need any special stuff to write lists. And also, who are you asking to follow you? So if you're building a business, maybe you're searching for a co-founder, which I highly recommend in terms of like keeping each other sane and also helping with the workload. But if you want to go it alone, eventually you're going to have to, maybe you need some help, maybe you need some people to do some stuff, maybe you need to, maybe there's some friends and family that are going to give you a little bit of money to do it. Maybe some people are going to muck in and do some free resources. So who are you asking? Who do you need on this kind of journey to start off? Get really clear about that, because you're going to have to ask them some stuff. You're going to have to go off and say like, hey, can you help me? So it's good to know to articulate that better to the people that you need help. Cool. Okay, so values. Now, what looks like an opportunity for you? What feels like an obstacle to you? And how do you define risk? Now, I believe that most good ideas are somewhere between an opportunity cost and a kind of obstacle, which would also be known as like a switching cost. So something that takes a little bit of energy away from what you're doing now, or maybe a lot of energy from what you're doing now, to then focus on something new. That is usually where the opportunity is in my experience. So when I say what does an opportunity look like for you, what do you perceive as an opportunity? If you are currently, let's say, a web developer right now, or you're a coder, currently the market with the whole vibe economy, the vibe coding, all of these apps that are coming out, you suddenly have an opportunity. You perceive that as, you can either charge to come in as the knowledge to help people out. You can consult on people who are vibe coding. You have also just then immediately turned your timeline of building something here to there, that's just been cut in half, so you can see it as an opportunity. But the same conditions for, let's say, let's say graphic designer, like my past when I was just doing logos and identities back in the day, I'd be a bit scared because all of that stuff can be generated. It's quite commodified now. It's a very busy, very noisy market. There are little bits of opportunities, but you might feel that the current market hasn't got an opportunity for you yet, or what you're looking at. So you want to get clear about that. So then the flip side of that is what feels like an obstacle to you. So you want to understand about like how you perceive things in the way. So like, what is a roadblock? If you really like learning skills, then if you say want to build something and you have to go off and read a few books and learn a few skills and watch a few tutorials, if you actually enjoy that, then that won't be an obstacle. But for some people, that is. Some people are very much, they maybe don't like being shit at something for a long time, or there's a bit of a resistance to maybe showing up and being a bit rubbish at stuff in the first stages. Like, learning guitar, the people that played guitar when you were kids, and then the people that stopped playing guitar, the people that played guitar were able to sit in that horrible thing of like, oh God, okay, what's a C, what's a G, what's a whatever? How do I move to that? What's that chord? God, how's that scale? They were able to sit in that, and the other people that were like, oh, I'm shit. No, I'm going to be shit forever. So you want to understand what you perceive as an opportunity and what you perceive as an obstacle. And then how do you define risk? So risk will switch for a lot of people. So I like a bit of risk. I can tolerate quite a lot of risk. Hence my career path was, I was full-time. I went to uni full-time, and then after 5 years full-time, I went freelance. And then I slowly kind of iterated on that to become a brand consultant. And then I've co-founded a sprint design agency with a friend. So I use that as a superpower rather than, let's say, some other people who are a bit more analytical, who maybe there's nothing wrong with having a full-time job and working for a company and building someone's dream. There is nothing wrong with that at all. I just want to do my own thing. But the people who want to do that would see my life as a risk, where I would see their life as a risk because I'm not able to do the things I want and I'm on somebody else's time. I'm not in charge of my own stuff. So you see, how you see the world will kind of mitigate what you process as risk. So get really clear on that. Write it all down, because this stuff helps you work out what you value in life, rather than just saying like, I like this, I do that. Your behavior in how you act through your life, and where you've jumped off an opportunity, where you've not done something because of an obstacle, or where you've either had a glorious success or a glorious failure because of risk, will give you some signal to help you have that kind of idea. So next one is motivation. Now, what's your motivation? What's driving you? What's slowing you down? Now, similar framings to the last one, but what's your motivation? Now, if that is literally just to pay rent, that is a fine motivation in my opinion. If it is just to make money, that is completely fine. It might not always be the thing, but if it's your first business, definitely. If it's if it's any business, right? We need money to exist in the world. There's some hard times out there, who knows? But like, motivation, if it's just money, is great. Where I would maybe start to flag it, if it's motivation for other reasons, like some of the more, I guess, like Jungian shadow stuff, like if you're trying to prove yourself, if you've got whispers in your head that you're trying to outwork, if there's a lot of self-doubt, if there's a bit of self-loathing, some of those motivations can be tricky and difficult. And if you don't understand them going in, when you start to bring people in, or when you start to co-found, or when you start to have to kind of delegate, they'll start to manifest in it, for want of a better phrase. So it's good to understand what's driving you. If what's driving you is you just want to be the best, if you just want to be right, all these things will work fine. Like I've not been in I've only done my path, so I can't talk about like how if somebody over here who had a horrible childhood and whatever and suddenly has an amazing ability to have a massive driving force and build a business. I can only talk about what I know, but I do just think that it's good to understand and accept what's motivating you. You don't have to change it, but it's good to know, and it's good to know what's driving you. And then it's also good to know what's slowing you down, because sometimes I would say Like, let's say you're a perfectionist, right? Now, that you could be motivated by building the best things, top grade everything. You could be driven by a sense of innovation, let's say, in almost like a aspirationally Steve Jobs-esque idea. But if that motivation is actually slowing you down because you're not pressing publish on anything, you're not launching anything, you're not iterating in public, or you're not being afraid to be wrong, then that can actually be slowing you down. So somewhere in that, for instance, if you're motivated by money, which a lot of us are in terms of how we see the world, but like if that's like a real strong thing, and then driving you is probably maybe like that you want to be, you want social status, or you want to be have an affiliation with being the best. But that could also slow you down because you might be focused on making money so quick that you're just like bam, 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 I'm doing this. What's that hack? What's that? Cool, what's this? Okay, yeah, cool. I'm going to start a community. Okay, cool. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And that motivation can actually kind of cloud it because you're driven by this sense of like, I want status. I want to be this. I want to be that. That can actually end up slowing you down because you're not building the fundamentals of the business, let's say. So have a think on that. Okay, so beliefs. Why do you believe in what you're doing? And do you have evidence to confirm your opinion? Now, we've all built things that nobody wanted, for want of a better phrase. We've all thought that our idea was the best and everyone was going to want it, only to press publish or to launch it and it completely flop, or no one want to buy it, or us build out loads of things and it not happen. Been there, done that. I've got a graveyard of ideas that never went anywhere, or tried to and they didn't. No one wanted them. Why do you believe in what you're doing? The good thing is, it is good to have self-belief, and it is good to understand that you care about it. But and it's good to write that stuff down. But can you confirm some of those beliefs that you have? Because you might have some biases, you might have some blind spots, you might have a few kind of gaps. Because what happens when you start a business, especially when you're kind of doing the value creation thing, where you're like finding the value. So when I was transitioning from being just a brand consultant to wanting to co-found a specifically targeted sprint agency, like I was just realizing that I had a belief that you could do things quicker, that the pace and the rate with AI, everything was going to become, almost a third faster and therefore a third cheaper. Lots of things were going to commodify. I'm not the only person to think that, but like I kind of saw that coming a little bit maybe earlier than some of the people in my industry. And we then decided, right, okay, let's get out in front of this and do, sprint agencies seem to be working. We work really fast. We can get around people, build them a done for you thing, productize it, make it, cut out all the crap and make it that we just focus on the work and then go for it. And then the evidence that we had to find for that was, we had to talk to people. We had to do some free work. We currently still do free work. Like we do like outreach style boards. Be like, hey, we think we could work with you. Here's an hour's worth of quick ideas. It's how we do outreach to make the cold outreach less cold in the saturated market. But then people would feed back. People would kind of come back and it would adjust our offer, adjust our packaging. We talk to people, and that's how you have evidence. Whether you look like, if it's like a lived experience, if you're looking at the market, you can learn from the customer, or you can look at some data and see what's happening. So it's good to understand that we will, if you have a belief system, or if you believe in what you're doing, there will be blind spots, or there'll be unknowns, there'll be things you're not aware of, things you've not got to yet, hurdles you've not climbed. So it's good just to do an audit, I'd say, almost a philosophical audit on what you're doing. Okay, culture. Now, this might be a bit too early for some of you, but I do believe the getting in at the ground up, I'll tell you a couple of stories, but like culture is important. So how do you show up? What's your rally cry? And how do you behave? So how do you show up means just how do you show up visually and verbally on the internet? Let's do it for that. Rather than if you're starting, you're probably, I'm going to assume, building on the internet. And even if you have a physical product, it's being advertised or marketed on the internet. So how do you show up? What do you sound like? What do you talk like? How do you visually show up? Where have you positioned yourself in the market? Just what do you look like? Because that will attract a certain type of people. Like if you go super premium and super kind of classic heritage, you're going to attract a certain amount of people, and those people will have a certain degree of values and alignment that works with that, the way you've turned up, that will inform your culture later on. So what's your rally cry? Essentially, what is your kind of, if you had to have a neck tattoo, or if you had to kind of have one of those mugs that sits on your desk and it had what you sort of believe in, what is your rally cry there? What is your, some of the big ones like bias towards action, this, not that. We believe in X. We care about Y. Like, it doesn't have to be pithy. It doesn't have to be proper aphorisms, but like, what is your rally cry? And you can have a few. So at Sprint Depth, one of our rally cries is 10 days is a long time, just because that helps frame that we're always trying to iterate, that 10 days would in any other context be quite a small amount of time, but because we can use AI, because we can kind of consolidate that process, it keeps us always thinking about innovation. So it's just one of those nice like little things you can bring to light. Are we doing this with speed? Are we doing this in a departmental way where we can productize it, or we can keep going with it? So just like those little logs are good. And finally, how do you behave? So again, your behavior is a surer sign of the culture you're going to build. So rather than all these values, all these bloody sliders to choose your personality, actually look at what you've done for the last year. Look at the videos you've watched on YouTube. Look at the emails you've sent. Look at the conversations you've had. Look at some of the tweets you've done. Like, what is that behavior? Are you virtue signaling in the sense that you're doing a virtue play? So you're like, oh, guys, we need to recalibrate our things about this. We need to make X normalize. We need to normalize Y. Those are very virtue signaling plays on the internet. All fine, do what you want. Or are you more like, the more kind of competence thing, like, here's a tutorial for you to do this. Here's 5 tips that I've learned doing Y. Some of these ideas will be that you're a little bit more about competence, that you want to display that you've got skills. And then other ones might be if you're going like after people, so you're picking a fight with somebody. So you're just like, these guys, or I took this guy's course and it was rubbish, and then I did this, or this stuff over here is greenwashing, and that's why we're launching a product over here. So like, how do you behave? Is the sort of culture you're going to be building, is it going to be a bit of a zero sum? Is it a one-upman thing? Are you going to be much more collaborative and talking about inclusivity and whatever, or are you not? Are you going to be exclusivity? Like, we all have to do the same thing. But yeah, how you behave, what you do, that behavior will kind of lead to a set of habits and a set of actions, and those actions and habits will begin to solidify into a little bit of your identity, and then that identity will be what you attract when you show up in the world, and people will gravitate to that, and then that will ultimately be the culture that you build. So you want to understand and watch your behaviors and see what's doing it. So understand that better. Cool. Truth. Okay, so what is your contrarian truth, and who shares it with you? Now, if you've read 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, he talks about the contrarian truth. This isn't my idea. This is something that I find really helpful, and especially in what we're building right now and what I've built in the past. Now, what I mentioned earlier, our contrarian truth is we believe that 10 days is a long time. And that is sort of 10 days is a long time. When we're saying, like, one of our things is if you focus on just the work, 10 days is a long time. We've condensed our strategy workshops into like 3 hours rather than what would probably be 6 to 8 3-hour sessions. We've just kind of dialed it, tried to productize it as much. So yeah, that's our belief. And in our industry, in graphic design, in branding, in marketing strategy and performance and brand building, and like identity in general, identities can take, my first job, I spent a year of my life building a guideline for like a big British brand, kind of institution brand. And it was great. I learned loads, but it was like a year of my life. And the idea that we haven't moved further than that or faster than now is ludicrous. I've been doing this for 15 years. Like, this is all I can do. And you get faster and faster and faster and faster and faster. I do believe now we live in a world where you can have speed, and you can also have quality because it's no longer bound by human labor. You can have things that, for instance, robots, AI, the internet, that happen at such a high rate that you can have quality and can have speed. But maybe to get there, you have to have the experience. Who knows? And then who shares it with you? So if you want to build something, this contrarian truth needs to, you're going to have to wear it like a bit of a label or a bit of a shield or a bit of a, sometimes both. You're going to have to kind of shout this from the rooftops. So who shares that with you? That might be your customers. That could be your co-founders. Certainly needs to people who are going to come on that journey with you. They're going to need to believe it, or you're going to have to convince them about that. So get really clear on that one line. Like, what is that? Obviously, yeah, 10 days is a long time. It might sound pithy to other people, but in how we approach our work and how we think is really important. We're building everything around 10 days. So, for instance, like we have our workshop on the morning at like 9 a.m. if we can, relevant, depends on time zones. But that would be 3 hours. Then after that, we then do a report of that. We send like a book that goes day one. Then for the next days, we do our sprints. But on our Friday, so we have baked in that it's 5 days and then the weekend and 5 days, because we really believe in that kind of when you down tools and stop work, that little kind of 2 weeks where you actually go off and hang out with your family and stop thinking, your subconscious is still chewing it over. And then day 6, we literally is like the fresh eyes audit, where we get to look over it. I'm sure you've done this in your life or in your brand or whatever you're working on, where you look at something, and because you've had that step back, you come in, you're like, oh my God, we've got to kill that. Oh, that's not good. That's not good. So we baked that into our process. So 10 days as a unit to be able to deliver that on Friday. We've really thought about that. We've run the thing. We built our own brand on it. Once we were testing, like, is this possible? Can we actually do this? And now we're working with clients and it works. So you want to build something with people that believe in what you're doing, because that's your kind of harnessing truth, especially in the beginning. I wouldn't worry about all these other brand shoes. Yeah, you can kind of OD on this a little bit if you get the wrong strategist, let's say. But just one thing that you can just keep repeating. Okay, so audience. Now, who do you want to be in your club? Who are your 100 founding followers? And people like you do things like what? So who do you want to be in the club? Going back to that culture, the culture you want to build and the people that you want to kind of, your first customers or the people you want in the club or the people you aspire to be, there might be a disconnect there. There might be a gap. We often want to build a culture of, let's say, performance, skill, and high caliber IRL, cool, whatever community things you want to build. And then the people we actually want them to be in, are all the people over here that are very cool and very great, but they don't really instill those ideas. But they make us feel good, or they give us status, or they give us affiliation to other ideas. So whatever you're building, obviously, that minimum viability at the start. You don't just want to go mass market. You want to go really down your niche. And who do you want to let in, essentially? Like, who do you want to, if you think of it from a community point of view, like letting those people in the group or in the chat, like if they're like talking about wrong stuff or talking about weird stuff, then those community guidelines, they can really influence a culture. Same as, I guess we can split this down into internal, external. Like from a customer point of view, if you're doing like people who are coming in or using your service, like you might really want to work with these people, but they might really not fit the values. Like they might not get back to your emails. They might ghost you. They might be really slow on payments. You don't want to work with these people long term. It's not good. You might have to, in the short term, say no to the job, but in the long term, you create a good clientele that actually don't give you a load of flipping headaches every day. And then internally, you want people who, if you want to, me and my co-founder, we never have to text each other to be like, hey dude, where you at? Hey, who's working? We're both in there. We both wake up at 7, both go to the gym, both boshing it, have breakfast and we're working by 8, and then we finish somewhere in between 6 to 7, whenever we do it. If we finish early, we finish early. When one of us has to take half a day off, when one of us isn't working because we have to do something else, it's fine because the work gets done and no one's like looking over each other's shoulders. Imagine if I'd built something with somebody different and who I was like chasing, or I had to be asking them to do this and the other, or vice versa. Imagine someone was asking me to do other things and I didn't want to do them. Like, it's going to be a nightmare. Don't do it. So who are your founding followers? I would say that treat this like a SaaS company. So every SaaS company loves to, when they get to about Series A and they get some money, every single person that was kind of in the origin or the founding group writes in their LinkedIn bio, founding developer, founding whatever. So they essentially kind of almost grandfathered in, but they want to know that they weren't just hired. So when you're kind of building a business, seed round, you kind of just all scatty. There's a couple of you doing it, whatever, and then you'll get some money, and then maybe you get to validate the idea. You get to do some R&D, get it. When you get to Series A, you basically, it's all systems go. You need to validate it in the market. You need to grow. You need to build out a team. Have a good go-to-market strategy that's going to actually have traction. You know, you're going to hire some people. So those 5 indie people that were sat in the room working really hard late nights, drinking all the coffee, suddenly they're going to be in a room with hires, and you might start to bring in a bit of leadership team. There might be some management people. You might have to govern them ideas, govern some strategy. So then these guys, you know, they might have people that come in that supersede them in terms of rank, of actually like they've probably paid more, or they might have a better job title. But what they don't have is the founding follower bit. So, or the founding developer, the founding designer, the founding whatever. The same idea will apply to your business. So your first 100 customers, or you want to treat them like royalty, you know, like you want to go above and beyond, even like you want to get, I don't want to say, you want to get weird, but like, you know, you want to be in touch, you want to be talking to them, you want to give them next level concierge like service. So whatever, if you are doing a service, you want to do the best service ever. Like that goes from like, if you're mowing lawns, you know, you want to go next level, so that you need them to give you 5-star reviews. You need them to be in the pub and talk about something they've worked with. If you're doing more of like a productized service, or like in the digital graphic design, branding, web development space, you want to leave no stone unturned. You want to over-deliver, absolutely over-deliver, that those guys cannot help but talk about you. And then they want to use you again. And the great idea is that everybody loves to find that indie band that was really small. Because when you grow, which hopefully you will when you work really hard and you put a lot of effort in 2 years' time, those people will be like, oh yeah, I used to work with that guy. Or, oh yeah. Or they'll be hopefully still be, I mean, all clients do eventually churn out, especially if you run in agency stuff in my experience. I haven't built my own piece of software. I've only worked in SaaS as a brand consultant, but I've run, from an agency perspective and running a service business, I specialize in service. So yeah, people churn out eventually after, you know, it can be years, but everyone sort of moves on just because everyone's constantly changing. But, you know, those people go on to do different things. And I'm still talking to some of the people that I worked with years ago because we had a good relationship and I delivered a good thing. So be sure to treat them like royalty, for want of a better phrase. And people like you do things like what? Now, this is obviously a riff on Seth Godin's People Like Us Do Things Like This. And it's just talking about the kind of how you show up again, how you show up online, but the audience that you're building, if you act in a certain way, that will attract a certain type of people. And you want to just make sure that those two things are calibrated. Like you want to make sure that these followers or your customers are the ones you want, and if they're not, then you can say no. You can turn down things. I know it's hard to do. Believe me, it's hard to do when you're building something and you're like, okay, where's the next? No one's knocking on the door. Yeah, I've sent loads of emails. No one's replied. It's very easy to just randomly start taking on work, or work with people that are not your ICP, or work with random shit. And sometimes you have to do that. You have to keep the lights on, pay rent. Don't take my advice in that way. But sometimes what that means is you might open up people, or bring people into the party that are maybe not your ideal audience or not your ideal client. So just make sure that's in alignment. Okay, so pain. What problem do you solve? What pain do you remove? What promise do you keep? And what people do you hero? Now, this could lightly be said is around building your offer. I'm not going to spend time on offers because that's a whole video in itself. Let me know if you want me to actually do that. But what problem do you solve? So the easiest way to think about what you do is there is something that you are good at, or something that you have a passion to learn about that you can solve. Now, from a very functional point of view, if you sell bottles of water for £1 on the side of the street, you are solving a desire for thirst, or a thirst in someone's life. If you make stupid videos about random stop frame animations and cracking loads of jokes, you solve a want for entertainment or a desire for novelty. There are a lot of problems. Yes, you can just say, "Oh, we solve stress," or we remove friction, we help people who are overwhelmed, we supercharge this, we take away this, we remove that. Cool, but like it's good to understand really like a deep level what is the problem you're solving. A lot of people online will say like you don't need to do that, you can just do things, especially in design. They'll be like, design's not about solving problems, it's about making cool stuff. But then the want for the cool thing is a problem. It's somebody that wants to have a visual experience, or they want to be inspired to create something, or they want to experience something in a new way. So it's like a lack of novelty, or a lack of new experience. There's always an underlying problem that is being satiated, because that's just how we think. We have a feeling and then we rationalize it with a thought, and then we do that. So have a real think about the problem you solve. It sounds very easy. It is very simple on the surface, but the problems that you solve specifically in your business, you might think you solve this one, but you actually solve this one. That comes from sort of just getting out there and doing stuff. What pain do you remove? Now, problems and pains can be associated as the same thing, and but I like to unbundle them, just as like you could solve the problem of a lack of automation, but the pain you remove is actually the frustration of manual labor, or the lack of autonomy in the business, or the lack of free time to do something else. So there can be like a little cause and effect that you can break down. What promise do you keep? Now, I believe that branding, it's a verb for a reason, is essentially just promise fulfillment at scale. Now, that people believe that you're going to do something and you do that. So what are you doing and what are you delivering? Because it's very easy to say, we have this great technology that will solve X, and we remove this pain, and we remove X, Y, Z. But then if you can't keep your promise, like if you're really inconsistent, or you don't hit the mark, or you kind of promise things that no one wants, or they're completely separate to the problem that you're kind of setting out to solve, then that's a problem. And what people do you hero? Essentially, you want to become obsessed. So how you find a problem, for instance, just a quick deep dive on that, is you want to go hang out where the people that you want to help are. So we want to work with founders. We want to work with VPs of brand. We want to work with brand directors, marketing directors. So we go and hang out where they are, and we try and talk to them. Predominantly LinkedIn. We're in groups. We kind of talk to stuff, join some networking things here and there, and we want to talk to them. We want to find out what they're struggling with. We ping them DMs. We send them free little bits of work. We try and hop on a call with them. Like, we read internet blogs. We see what they're writing. We see what media's writing. You want to build this ICP, this like ideal customer person that you want to work with, like a profile of who you want to kind of show up for, and you just want to make them your kind of hero of your story. So like, we help these guys do that. We help these achieve this. We help this do X with, to unlock that. There's a load of frameworks. I think there's a video somewhere I've done on here that you can do. But spend a lot of time working this out. This is a video in and of itself, but hopefully these will just get you in the ballpark at the very least. Okay, so moving on from pain into desire. So what desire do you satisfy? what irrational behavior do you unleash, and what emotion do you enhance? Now, a desire, for instance, let's say a desire to be liked, okay? So people might join a platform, or like they might join Instagram because they think that they want to kind of follow their friends and learn about stuff. But what they actually want to do, and that is, they might want that might be a secondary thing, but they might want to be famous, or they might want to make friends, or they might want to appear cool. So there's like a desire for status, there's a desire for attention that is underpinning what the actual motivation, so the action they're taking. So if someone downloads an app and starts vibe coding, they might be learning about AI, so it might be helping them with a competence thing. But when they share it on their Twitter or their X, it might be a desire to be in that club. And it's good to understand that the pain you're solving and the desire you're satisfying, those two things are very linked, inextricably linked actually. But they can manifest in different ways. We run a couple of workshops, and this is really clear because we know this because we literally do this. But the one word problem, kind of the one problem you solve, and then the burning desire of the ICP, often those two things are different, and it's great to play it out. So really think about that. You want to get in the head and get in the head of the customer, which is why hopefully you're building something that you have a bit of experience in, because what's the adage? Your best customer is you yesterday. So you in the past, you 3 years ago, 2 years ago, solve for them, build for them, because you'll understand them. What were those things that you were trying to do, right? Like, why am I co-founding a sprint agency to build a sprint agency? Because I want to radically change an industry. I want to be a disruptor. I want to be a trailblazer. I love what I do. I care about what I do. But I think a lot of the old frameworks, a lot of the old systems are a bit out of date, and they're not really relevant in the future. And I want to be a part of that. So, the problem I'm solving is that we give design faster, and we give brand identities, and we help with branding and brand marketing, brand building, brand performance. But I'm also satisfying a desire that I'm building something that I'm proud of, that's kind of future-proof, at least for now. Okay, so what irrational behavior do you unleash? Now, we spoke about a behavior that you, in us, in you, but in your customers, what behavior? So there is only a certain amount of brands. Let's say, remember Supreme? I remember walking through London and they'd be like dropping their new drop, their new clothing line would be dropping, or they'd have a new trainer coming out or whatever, and there'd be a queue around the corner. Like Glastonbury tickets. What makes people? I've been in Excel sheets, multiple Excel sheets, with people where we all divvy up and then like 15 browsers, refresh, and then load it in and do it. Like, that's quite a mental thing. Like Oasis gig, what people will be prepared to do, what people would be prepared to do to go to a Taylor Swift gig. These irrational behaviors, these ideas are good to understand, because if people are motivated to get out of bed and go stand in the rain 2 days before a door opens to get a thing, then they have a connection to that. Like, the people that do that, you want to understand it, because that's almost a hyper charged version of your ICP, or like in that irrational behavior is some of the maybe significance that you have in their life. Whether you have significance, you're delivering significance. Same as let's say, if a good brand consultant does a tweet or like shouts out on LinkedIn or whatever saying like, hey, I've got 3 spots available, and they book them out really fast, and people drop 5K without really finding it. That irrational behavior, it's quite irrational to just kind of give someone money just to kind of get in the room with them. Like, I imagine Chris Do or Russell Brunson or Alex Hormozi or whatever, I imagine they just have this back-end consulting somewhere that people pay a lot of money, but they want to get in the room with them, right? They want to get their wisdom. Like, what is that? What is that connection? You want to understand that, and it might be small at the start. It might not be. It might be really irrational in terms of like your irrationality that we have, like a kind of normal level, might be that they always comment on your posts and they sign up to everything that you do, or they always show up to something. Like, there's a connection there. So you want to find that out and understand it. And what emotion do you enhance? Now, I'd always push for positivity, positive and optimism. But let's say, so let's take, do you inspire creativity? Do you make people feel curious? Let's say perplexity, branding, that's all about asking questions and having that curiosity coming through in the brand. Like, what thing are you trying to drive? That kind of, like, we're always like to speak about sprint department. Like, we always want to have that, like, iterating in public. We want to inspire that emotion of like kind of trying and testing and iterating and like learning on the job, and like not having that shame that's maybe or that, what's the word, stigma attached to that everything had to be like behind gates and you have to launch it and it has to be perfect and everyone has to go like, oh, congratulations, well done, lovely, 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 well done. Where in actual fact, I think the gritty kind of building on the fly, learning this, building the rocket as we're flying, building the plane as we're flying, is way more interesting and way more fun. And it might not work in all things, but I think it works really well in something as, very important as branding, but it's, we're not brain surgeons. We can have a laugh, we can mess around. It's visual and verbal, it's cool, we can play. So yeah, desire, behavior, and emotion. Okay, so advantage. Now let's talk about your competitive advantage or your unfair advantage. Where do you have leverage? What's your unfair advantage? And what can you customize to deliver that no one else can? So where do you have leverage? For instance, if you are, let's talk about sprint depth. So we're really fast. Like, I'm fast, he's fast, everyone's fast. We have set up everything to be very fast. We also, our leverage is that, like, I've done so many strategy meetings and decks and so on and so forth, and strategy pitches. I've contracted in agencies, I worked on big brands in-house and consulted. So the experience that I've had, co-founders done similar thing too. All of that we can leverage because we can kind of compress time. So our leverage is our experience, our leverage is our skill set and our ability to execute. And we work really hard to kind of narrow the gap between idea and execution and just understand the markets that we work with. We've done the research. We've at this rate we understand sometimes too much, that we know what they need. So we can leverage that in terms of, we can begin to sort of systematize that, or dare I say it, automate some of it here and there. So what's your unfair advantage? Now, in terms of that, like, what are you really good at, or what are you doing? So if you happen to be really good on camera, like, I don't really like being on camera, I'll be honest with you. Like, I'm doing this because this is what the market needs. YouTube's a great way to kind of share. I want to create, I want to write. I would much rather write a long email, but no one reads that, and here we are. So, but what has happened is that I'm actually beginning to enjoy it. I'm building a new skill now. It was a bit of a nightmare at start, but we're 40 videos in, 50 videos in, and now I'm starting to vaguely enjoy it a little bit more. But if someone, for instance, has a really good voice or has a really good presence on camera and can just show up and do it, then that's an unfair advantage that's maybe taken me almost a year to maybe get to a point where I feel a little bit credible to be able to talk and express myself on camera. It's different off camera. But if you have one of those things, if you naturally are, like, for instance, let's just use the sports analogy. If you're 7 foot, you should play basketball. You're going to be good. If you're built like a triangle, you should probably play rugby. Like, you're going to be good. Or you should row. You know what I mean? Like, it's that kind of thing. If you're really tight and really small, you should probably be in martial arts or be an actor. What have you naturally got, either in a skill set or in a kind of nature version that you can use as leverage? And then what can you customize to deliver that no one else can? Now, everything is a rehash of a rehash of a rehash. Everyone is doing the same thing. There are branding agencies out there. There are brand sprint agencies out there. There are lots of things. But what it's in the customization. You are your unfair advantage, for want of a better phrase. So how you customize something or how you put your spin on it, that is what becomes something that no one else can do, because no one else can do you better than you. So understanding like how you show up, how you talk. I know I talk very fast and I'm a bit wibbly wobbly here and there, but I think when people will want to hear the same information from me, and we package it in a way that is hopefully a bit more fresh and a bit more less stale than some of the boring shite that comes out of some of the other design agencies, or some of the uncredible stuff that some of the people who haven't actually really got that much experience are just regurgitating from. Hopefully some of this stuff is tailored because it's mined from frontline stuff, from jobs and work and experience that we've actually done. So what can you do in your life, or what have you got that you can customize to make something that no one else can deliver, and therefore unique? So that can be your advantage. Okay, so narrative. Now, this might not be for everybody, but this is something I really like in terms of how you want to, if you're a founder, if you're kind of building that big vision, if you want trying to make real trade, if you have got a vision that's like over there, you're not maybe just about money, maybe it's you've done that and you're trying to build something that's long term, or maybe you're going up against something and there's a little bit more positioning in that, a little bit more storytelling might be required. So this might not be relevant for everybody, but for instance, what mountain did you climb? How did you defeat your dragon? And what treasure did you return home with? Now, in that hero's journey, you'll notice how every CEO or founder who goes on a podcast, they have that moment, don't they, where they had nothing and they were down and out on their luck, and maybe it happened twice. And then what happened was it was all about to end. Elon Musk, Tesla was about to shut down. Alex Hormozi, I've been robbed. I've lost 100K twice. Whatever. Insert. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and then suddenly, I was able to find a thing. They've curated the narrative. I'm not saying it's not true, but the time frames might be slightly different. They might have had more money than they had. They might not have been completely destitute. There might have been a bit more runway than they're letting on, but they're creating a story. So in that ecosystem of storytelling, what mountain are you climbing? So, what's your Everest? What do you want to get to? Like, I think that in the future from Sprint Depth, we might be able to do like 48-hour brands, 72-hour brands, where we can maybe hopefully way in the future start with a service, build, productize the service. Then if there was software at the end of it, way in the end of it, you could maybe build a companion that was trained on all of our stuff that people could buy into service and they get advice from us. And then maybe there was like a centralized branding hub where people could upload everything, and it was almost like a cloud monitored thing that could be deployed at certain times. I think these probably exist with people who've got actual millions of capital to invest in it, but like that would be really cool. That would be the mountain we're climbing. But currently we're just climbing the kind of speed and quality mountain and trying to iterate and understand that in the SaaS and B2B space. What is the dragon that we're defeating? So what is the dragon that you're defeating? Well, we're defeating essentially the legacy industry. So the legacy format and the way that legacy agencies have done it before in a very gate-kept, expensive thing. We want to prove that you can do it better, more affordable, but with better result, because we cut out all the middlemen, cut out all the bureaucracy, and we just focus on the work. If you just focus on the work, 10 days is a long time. You see, it helps frame, it all comes in. And what treasure did you return home with? So from all of our experience, we've taken everything that we know and we've basically condensed that into 10 days. So the treasure we've taken is that we know how to position a brand, we know how to write strategy, we know how to make messaging frameworks, we know how to enrich a pipeline, we can do from sales, from click to close, we can play with all of those things from we can do awareness campaigns, we can do top, middle, bottom funnel campaigns, we can execute that design, but we can also help ideate, we can work with kind of the written and the copy side from a top level thing, and we can get really dialed on, what help, like with your landing page, what decreases drop off. How can we talk about this stuff because we know that people need to land on that? How can we help? Blah blah blah. I can go on and on and on. So all these treasures we condense in, and we kind of give them all as much as we possibly can. So people get loads and loads of work and information and ideas from us because we just want to help and give stuff away, and we believe that we're kind of investing in that relationship. And if people just go off, they'll soon find that it's hard to execute because we might talk about it very casually, like it's very easy and pithy, but it's because we've got the muscle memory, we've worked hard. So that treasure is our maybe our creative goggles, let's say. Okay, so future. Now, what does the future look like when you're involved? Why are you optimistic about tomorrow? And what changes downstream from your contribution? Now, what does the future look like when you're involved? It's just a good optimistic statement to talk about. Like, it's just good to futurecast, like what could happen. So if we're involved, I want to give real world examples. Like when we're involved at Sprint Depth, it would look like we would be every business needs a sprint department. We want to be yours is one of our kind of hooks, let's say. So when we're involved, you would have all these brands that are kind of building, really cool. And when we're involved, we would just kind of come in and be like, oh, have you thought about that? What about this? What about that? What about that? You thought about this? And then maybe if you have enough of those aggregated, some of the stuff we could productize, some of the stuff we could have on organic media like this, and then some of the stuff might have to be one-to-one consulting. But we would be a hell of a lot cheaper than legacy. We have been at every part of the pipeline. We would have all of this data and all of this kind of knowledge from working in the companies. There's loads of SaaS companies, but they're all, there are patterns if you go through it enough. And then we'd have all that experience. So we would be able to, facilitate and help. We might also be able to create things, free resources to improve the world. You build out your future where it's not just, yes, you're getting paid, but maybe they aren't crazy high tickets. Maybe they're more smaller high tickets, but a lot of the stuff is automated or pre-recorded, or maybe there's AI in there, maybe there's trained models, all of that stuff, really exciting. So think about you, when you're involved, how does the future change? And why are you optimistic about tomorrow? I don't think you'll build anything good if you're not optimistic about the future. It's very difficult currently right now, especially as a creative, to not be a bit overwhelmed by the level of AI. But I really do think pessimism will get you nowhere. Like, pessimists are a nightmare to work with. They're a nightmare. They suck the life out of the fun. And even though you might feel like you're in a bucket and you're chucking the water away and, oh God, we're slowly sinking, having a pessimist in there being like, told you so, is not going to help. Whereas having an optimist who's like, I found this random thing, let's plug the hole with it. Oh yeah, great, the wine bottle saved our lives. Blah, blah, blah. And what change is downstream from your contribution? So when people talk about, I want to change the world, I want to change this, I really don't like the word, change. Like, how are you going to change the world, Timmy? It's a little bit, I know it's not, but from the surface, or when people may be entering it or hearing it for the first time, it could be a little teeny tiny bit entitled. So I like to frame it as what changes downstream from your contribution. It just frames it as you have to do a lot of work, do the work. What you want is on the other side of a hell of a lot of work. So if you want to democratize knowledge for the entire human race, your contribution would be you probably have to invent Google or Wikipedia. Like, it's not just, I'm going to tear down society, or I'm going to single-handedly scan every PDF on the planet. So what change in your business or in your life or what you want to achieve is downstream from the contribution. And it's good because it means that you have to also frame it as the change I want to make, or the change you seek to make to be a bit Seth Godin, is framed in a hell of a lot of work, because that's what it takes. Cool. Okay, fight. Now, again, going back to some of this stuff, this is good to have in your back pocket. It's also good for content, good for how you shop on the internet. But who is your Goliath? So if you're David and you're the small guy, the outlaw, the little kind of underdog, and you've just got your pack of stones or whatever, who is your Goliath? what resistance are you rallying against, and why are you rebelling? So who's your Goliath? For instance, go pick a fight with somebody who's really big. Like go pick a fight with an industry or a legacy method. Legacy is a good one, for instance. It's always because that is the behemoth and the whales. To get that big, to be a Goliath, it had to be around. So if you're launching a no sugar natural drink, you will want to go up against some of the Unilevers and the Coca-Colas of the world. That big thing of like, these guys do this, I want to do that. You know, and you're kind of pointing a finger at them, starting a fight with them, and then when people look at you, you're saying, here's this alternative. So it's good to understand, you know, if you're an e-com business, your Goliath is probably like fast fashion and H&M and that kind of stuff. If you're a SaaS business, your Goliath is probably, you know, the big CRMs, the HubSpots, the Salesforces, that stuff. If you're creating design software, it might be Adobe, that kind of thing. Like understanding what is the big Goliath in the room and how can you take that apart, or how can you systematically unbundle that, or take bits, or kind of hit them where it hurts, do things they can't do, that kind of thing. What resistance are you rallying against? So in terms of resistance, if you, in the Steven Pressfield sense, if you've read The War on Art, like resistance is that thing that stops change, you know, that bureaucracy or thing that the whisper or the lack of motivation or the whatever that obstacle is that stops, call it resistance. So if you are, let's say, Sprint Deck, to give it tactical, you know, we are rallying against the idea that these big, you know, LVMH, the Pentagrams of the world, these big behemoths are just working with other big behemoths. And then there's like this massive, everyone who's got budget at the top, and then there's a massive gap of like design poverty or brand poverty essentially. And then at the bottom, then you suddenly hit the seed round kind of low level stuff. And then below that, you have like your mate who's starting a band and leads a logo. There seems to be that massive gap. And I think the resistance that we're rallying against is that that gap shouldn't exist, but it exists because, you know, so many of these middle agencies have like 100 employees and stuff and 50 employees, and they're, you know, working on these big things, and the industries and the brands are scared to work with the smaller people because obviously they want to know that it's invested in their time. They want security. They're buying security. They're also buying skill sets. Blah 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 blah. But the resistance is that is all going to change, because when you can vibe code a thing over the weekend and launch it, vibe marketing over here, have an audience, like some of those brands haven't really kind of, or some of the studios, they're very pure brand, and I just don't know what's the longevity on that, because all businesses are going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and more boutique. And you know, Naval in the Navalmanac, he talks about how he hopes that there's 6 billion people on the planet. I hope one day there'll be 6 billion businesses. Like, I think that is coming true more than ever, that you will have these small micro niches of you know, people who are dialed. So everyone who's really into X will have, there'll be that one agency that does it, there'll be that one guy that does it, that one thing that does it, bang, and then this one and this one, and you won't really go much outside that, and it'll be very almost merchant esque, for want of a better phrase. Maybe that's a bad thing, I don't know. But very consultant based, very small dialed consultants that come in, come out, or we build our own thing. Everyone's building their own things because it becomes so much easier. You'll have these little teams where all you really need is, for instance, like a founder that's a designer, a developer, a coder and a copywriter or whatever. Probably wouldn't need the copywriter for the start because you can use, I mean, it's shite, but you can put English that will vaguely perform. But do you know what I mean? Like, the model is changing. So the resistance we're rallying against as a business at Sprint Deck is that, you know, you don't need this mental amount of these gigantic kind of behemoths. Like, that's not how creative has to be. Like, when kids graduate, you don't have to go to uni anymore. Maybe you can just find 5 people and just work on something over a summer, save yourself 50k and invest that in your first 5 products, and then you'll have learned so much more. So that's the kind of thing I think we're doing. And why are we rebelling? what, because it's, so in your question, like, why are you rebelling? I think it will probably be a timely thing. It would probably be a frustration thing born out of something where you've done it and you're like, oh God. Like I once did a brand for a guy. He started a linen shirt company because he just couldn't find a shirt that he always wore linen shirts, and he couldn't find a linen shirt company that worked. So he built one himself. And I'm sure there are lots of things like that. I'm building this YouTube channel because I don't really think there's much. There's lots of people reporting on other things. There's lots of people talking about like, oh, here's cool packaging that someone else did, as like an aggregate, but as like an art direction vibe. But I want to be like boots on the ground. Like I'm a consultant. I understand. I'm an ideas guy. I'm a strategy guy. I want to be on, boots on the ground with people being like, well, have you thought about this? What about this? Have you tried this? I don't think that challenge exists. So we're building it. So think about how these questions apply to you, and what fight are you fighting? Okay, so mentors. Now, who is on your Dream 100? Who are the top 10 people and who is number 1? Now, Dream 100 was popularized by Russell Brunson and a few other people. Russell Brunson's the ClickFunnels guy. I think it's actually by somebody else. Maybe it's Dan Kennedy or somebody else before that. I'm not sure. But I first heard of it through his content and books and stuff. Now, essentially, who's your Dream 100 is essentially 100 people that you, in your niche or in your whatever you're building, that you want to work with. Not necessarily that you want to just immediately say, hey, buy my thing. That you want to like shadow, or you want to try and just, I'll do anything, let's say. So confession time, Dream 100s are really hard to build. Like they take, especially when it's like full, like you're fully working. Like I've only ever got to like 50, because just it's really tricky. It's really hard. I do recommend doing it and kind of keep going with it. But like we'll do. Also, it's slightly tricky for us because we're doing it as a 2, and it's very hard. Like after the 50, like from a professional point of view, it's very hard not to get super personal. And then it's like, do I want to just work with this person? How does it work with the brand? So it's really interesting. This is a borrowed idea that I really think is important. I'm still struggling with this one. But if you get 100 people, basically they are, people who are in the world that you want to work with or collaborate with or somehow be in the room with. And it can, you might just have to show up and be like, hey, how can I help? I want to do something. Might have to send them, be like, hi, you're doing this thing. Can I do this for free? Can I do, how do I get, what has to happen for me to work with you? Top 10, it's really interesting what happens. So I've got like my top 10 or top 20, and then you have like the bottom inconsequential 30, 40. But that middle gap is really hard because you're just like, yeah, he's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. And like, obviously it gets like really random, and that's where you sort of lose hope because you're just like, oh, well, I don't really care about these people because it's so far down the list. So I think what actually happens, maybe I have done it, but you sort of have that 10 and then you slowly do 20 and then you sort of bounce around that bit. But who is number 1? You will know your number 1. You will know your number 10. And I can encourage, try and get above 30, 40. But this is one I'm still working on. I need to do 100. And it's just, this is really good. The reason why I say to do this is because you'll realize who you're aspiring to be like, what you're aspirationally almost engineering yourself to. So that would be the kind of content you're watching, the kind of stuff you're learning. If you watch a lot of Tony Robbins, you're going to be very like, oh, let's go. I need to just manifest. I need to believe in it. If you watch a lot of Alex Hormozi, you're going to be very tactical, like do these 5 things, value stack this offer, do this. If you follow Iman Gadzhi's stuff, you're going to be maybe more about the lifestyle. And it keeps going down. I'm just plucking these people out of thin air, by the way. They're just internet. So keep going down till who they are, and then that will understand how maybe some of your actions are calibrated. If those 10 people are like completely nothing to do with what you're doing, then that's interesting. I'm not saying there should be action there, but maybe you're like, okay, so I'm kind of living this world, this aspirational world, but then I'm trying to build this thing over here. And if you're constantly looking over there in that kind of not comparing yourself to them, but more like, I wish I was over here. Maybe that signal to pivot, or maybe that signal that you you might be building the wrong thing, mate, for want of a better phrase. Okay, innovation. Now, what's your unique combination? What connection do you make for innovation, and what's your edge? So what's your unique combination? So for instance, if you're taking speed and quality and then productized service, and then maybe there's one-on-one consulting and workshops, that combination sort of is a quick medley towards what sprint department is. So like, what are you combining? This plus that equals that. What is that thing? And this maybe doesn't have to be in the gimmick sense of like, I'm doing haircuts and leg waxing. They're two hair things. I'm doing haircuts and motorbike. No, that would work. That's great. Motorbikes and haircuts work great. Why do I keep using haircuts? I'm doing pasta and haircuts. Italian restaurant in the back of a hair salon. That can be a bit weird. But like your combination of how you're making your process unique. So we start with a workshop, and then we do sprints, and then we have that weekend, then we do the handover deck, then we do all these little things, all these little resources that we send to them. That combination makes it for a unique kind of boutique experience. So think about yours. How can you position it? What are you doing now? What could you add on that or change that? Or how can you communicate that combination? Are you even aware of the combination? Have you ever broken that down? What connection do you make for innovation? So innovation often comes from either like this plus that or this without that is a good frame to think. So driving without a steering wheel. So then it's full self-driving mode. Speed and endurance, weather, gear, and you've got Under Armour, whatever. Adventure and next, We're an hour and a half in, so my brain's starting to get mushy. So think about what is the this plus that or the this without that, this sans that, for instance. Like what you're removing from the process or what you're adding in, what you're combining to make that kind of innovation possible. So that's a good way to think about it. And then what's your edge? So you might not actually know what your edge is, but it's interesting. The way to do this, the easiest way to do this, because you might have to manufacture an edge, you might have to build it, and then that becomes your edge. So do an audit, do a competitor audit, go and see the top 10 people in your niche, see what they're doing, read everything that they're doing, and then be like, okay, so what is our niche? Okay, so for instance, ours is that we begin with a workshop. Because no one else does that, because I believe they don't really know what they're doing in that space. They're designers who are trying to deliver really fast identities, but they haven't got maybe the strategic background. So we front load the workshop that because I believe that was an opportunity there, and it's really good. And also because they get this sprint report. We do a workshop, direct to workshop, then we take all that stuff. They get a sprint report. Whilst we're immediate value, whilst we go off and start doing all the creative work, and then we deliver that as like a playbook. So they get high fidelity stuff that they can execute now. And then the idea is that if they can, crack on, we get them mobile, but then if they need to top up, we can come in as a little and consult on the back. And no one really offers that, or can, I think, offer it and deliver it in the way that we can. So that's our edge. So what can you do? And how's that packaged in your world? Competition. So who are you in direct competition with? What can they do that you can't? What can you do that they can't? And what do they do that you can use against them? So easy way to think about this is going back to that Goliath or that behemoth that you're in competition with. So let's say Adobe, just for a want of phrase, or Salesforce, they do a full suite of things. So they'll do your Photoshop, your InDesign, your Illustrator, your sound booth, your whatever. You couldn't possibly try and do all those things well. You would fail. Salesforce, your CRM, your enrichment, your onboarding, your nurturing thing, blah, 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 your data, your analytics, your campaigns, your digital stuff, endless stuff. So what could you immediately do? There is an unbundling happening in SaaS as it gets a lot easier to build little things. And people are building little micro tools. Micro SaaS, I think, is the kind of phrase that's emerging. So you immediately, what you can do if you're going up against the Goliath is they're doing the all-in-ones. You just do the one for the one thing. And you use all-in-one as a position of weakness, and you use that we are specialists over here rather than generalists over there as a point of leverage. So what they can't do if you're doing that, if your ploy is to go against the big people, is they can't move as fast as you. So you want to be able to be really nimble and really fast and really adaptive and really like boots on the ground, talking to your ICP, in the weeds, sharing, talking about features, talking about what you're building. If you're a service business, you want to be like constantly giving that really face-to-face concierge stuff. If you're, so like, let's say, let's take a van company, right? So Enterprise Vans or whatever, they very cold, third party owned. Someone kind of comes in and franchises it. You just have it. They turn up. You have to book it, whatever. If you wanted to disrupt the van industry, you would maybe have like the man with the van, but they're all bright pink. The person. It's almost like Uber. You can see their profile. They're coming to pick something up. They're coming to deliver it. Like, is there a way you can tell a story that means that you can do something that they can't, that becomes a strength? And then what do they do that you can use against them? Similar to what I mentioned with the all-in-one thing. You can then just talk about the inefficiencies of that, or how that works for these big guys up here, but it doesn't work for these people down here. And often these things are actually true, but you just need to frame it in a way that you can use it as leverage. So what story do you have to tell in the market so you can we can do this, they can't do that? How can you keep doing that mentality? Okay, and attention. What do you make that is worthy of attention? What do you steal attention from? And who do you direct, or what do you direct attention towards? So first one, what do you make that's worthy of attention? Now, attention is a finite resource, so don't enter into the content game or the creation game lightly. It's very hard to get people to look at your stuff or to even care that you exist. So you've got to thicken your skin there. But if you want to get attention, you have to make something that is worthy of attention. So you don't want to make massive top of funnel stuff, because no one will want to do, unless that's what you're doing. But like if you're doing targeted things, so to your ICP, if they struggle with this problem, you want to make this thing that is very targeted at that and helps them solve a specific problem. That would also be a lead magnet, but if it's in content or lead magnets or whatever, something that is worth someone scrolling through. Really simple, easy to consume, and actually worth like their time. Like, don't just give away the things that if you give away the things where you're like, oh yeah, they can have that thing, it's for free, they're going to smell it a mile off. You want to actually give something that maybe hurts a little bit, where you're like, oh God, like this tech took me, I've been writing these questions for a long time, had to compile them, had to build the thing, had to go off and make all this stuff. It took me a couple of days. But I care about what I'm talking about, hopefully, and I want to help if you're still watching. I really care about this kind of stuff. I really think it's important. And this is what I offer. This is what I'm actually good at. This is worthy of attention. I then have to work out how to package it, blah, 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 blah. But like if I'd just done like 56 questions and I just read them out with no stories, maybe whatever, then it maybe wouldn't have been of value. But this hurt a little bit to create, and that's how I know it was maybe worth something, and I'm giving it away for free. So who do you steal attention from? This goes back to your, I'm losing my voice. This goes back to your ICP, as well as your market share, like in your category, who's winning, what are they doing? How can you steal attention from them? Are they doing a mechanism that works? Can you talk about something against them? Can you they said this, so you do that? Can you have a contrarian outlook on what they said? If they're talking about this, can you reshare it and actually talk about that? How can you zig? How can you zag? How can you appear strong when they're weak? How can you appear weak when they're strong? Blah, 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 all the way down. Just strategies, really. Ways to... If they're talking about a certain thing, can you go in, like let's say if Justin Welsh, if you're trying to build a content course, or is it Content OS or something? He posts a tweet about like a one-man business. If you're trying to do something similar to that, you would go into the comments and you would comment on all the things, and you would find all the people, and then you'd follow all the people, you would DM all the people, or you'd use automated software, but I don't think it works as well as everyone says, to be honest. And what do you direct attention towards? So it's great if you can get attention, it's fantastic, but where's it going? It's going to be, you're only going to have it for a glimmer. So what is that call to action? What are you, what is the pipeline? What is the strategy? Like if you make loads of videos about something and then you get it and there's no book a call or no, here's a product, here's a result, here's a thing, like the attention will go somewhere else. So whilst it's hot, you want to capture that. If it's a sign up, if it's a content, if it's a book a call, blah, 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 blah. That kind of thing. like that's what you want to do. Okay, value. Now, how can you increase your upfront value? What is your current time to value, and how do you value stack? Now, these three admittedly might be a little bit specific and a little bit kind of marketing speak. So if this is a bit confusing, I understand. Sorry, there's no real way to not talk about it. But let's break it down. So how can you increase your upfront value? So upfront value, just think of it as when someone comes on your into your ecosystem or onto your page or follow something, what are they getting for free, kind of without having to log in? Not everything, you don't want, if everything's behind a paywall, no one will trust you. Right, so when they come on, is there a thing they can learn? Like if you come on to this YouTube channel, there's loads of videos you can watch that will hopefully help you out a little bit for free. You don't have to give me your email address or do whatever. Take that concept and apply it to all of the kind of shop fronts of your businesses on any platform or whatever. So upfront value, which helps build credibility, which helps people build a little bit of trustworthiness. It makes you worthy of trust because there's things they can actually look at. You can be. It's tricky. You can kind of almost create we've got enough thing where we want to create a resources channel on our website, but then there's that worry of, well, we're just giving away, just having all these resources there. Like we don't want to. Some of these resources, like our ICP, we work with, at Series A, you've got VPs of brand and brand marketing directors. They want us to do it for them. They don't want to learn this stuff. Maybe they do, some of them, but they don't want to spend all this time doing it. They want to buy it. So it's important to make sure that the resources that you're putting out there or the upfront value is aligned with your ICP. Or if you're talking about your TAM, so you're like total addressable market. So let's say we might have book a call consulting over here for our main guys, and then our slightly widened TAM, so maybe people who can't work with us yet but might work with us in the future, they might really like the resources. And then people who are maybe really wide in the ICP, those guys might need to just watch some videos for a while whilst they go off and build some stuff. So you want to understand that where people are in your ecosystem and have things available. And that's what upfront value is essentially. Okay, what is your current time to value? Now, what is time to value? Just to explain that. So when someone goes on your website, they buy your product, right? And then they use it. How quickly or how fast will they download your lead magnet or whatever? How quickly does it take for them to start feeling like, oh, I made the right decision? So there's a thing called the value gap. So like a customer will have a perception of something and then there'll be a reality. And where those two things collide often happens with a lot of people churning out and cancelling or asking or whatever, or being really pernickety or difficult. So you want to understand, reduce your time to value to as little as possible. For instance, when you download a piece of software, let's just say Photoshop. If you download Photoshop, when you log in for the very first time, there will be a tutorial that pops up to show you, like, this is how you do that. You want to do this? You need to do that. Did you need to do this? Any questions? Do you want to help me do this? That time to value thing can often be solved with education. So then when you're using it, you're like, oh, wow, cool. Oh, yeah, cool. You're doing this. Oh, cool. So for instance, like I did all the, wrote all the guidelines, did all the branding for make.com. And they found in the product that once they onboarded, the quicker they could get somebody to kind of connect their app with a spreadsheet or whatever to automate some tweets and hit the play button to see that happen, the quickest when they could do that to see that value, that impact it would have on their business if they got good at it, it really helped, made the customers a lot more sticky, helped decrease churn. So that time to value, if it's, let's go right to the bottom for ease and stuff. If you have a lead magnet, then once they open it, it should be aim for like under a minute. So they start reading it and like, oh, cool, I'm glad I did this. This was really cool. Don't have an essay, in the dawn of time, when the world created, I did this, and then 15,000 years later, I started an e-com business, blah, 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 blah. Like, you don't want to mess it up. If you're writing a tweet, the time to value should be seconds. So like title thing, and then the takeaway points, and then go away. There's real ways to work it out. If you're making a video, obviously you want to kind of, this is just the stuff that I'm learning, I guess. but you want to have a good thumbnail and title. You want to confirm it in the first 5 seconds. You want to explain what the video is going to be in the first 30, and by the minute, then you want to either get into it or introduce a new point, and then you're off. So understand where in your pipeline and where in your business and what you're doing, and understand how quickly you're getting time to value, and try and iterate on that. And then how do you value stack? This is just about basically how do you present your offer. Alex Hormozi is probably the best to talk about that in terms of like if you want to go full marketing, like showing all the things and showing all the stuff. But like I think you can also do that a little bit less visual. But then I'm not a millionaire. I haven't sold companies for hundreds of millions. So what do I know? So take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. But I would say that how can you value stack? You can tell that in a narrative of as simply as a nice bulleted list on a kind of package. So what do you get? And you explain, you get this, and this, and a bonus thing. This comes packaging. That kind of language. It doesn't have to be entirely gross. And then people want to see like this and this and this. They want to see the process. How can you arrange stuff that feels good? Be careful not to go like, I don't like the worth 1,000 drawn light ad that you can have for $15. That kind of stuff. It's not worth that much money. Like no one does those kind of reductions. I tend to go on I just tend to stack deliverables and stack insights rather than stacking like price. Like worth your time is the biggest thing. It's worth your time. It's not worth XYZ. It's worth your time for me. Okay, inversion. Now, if you've read or heard of Charlie Munger, I'm sure you have, he always talks about inversion, always invert. So what are you not? What is the opposite method of the traditional method? And if they zig and if they zag, how do you zinger, for want of a better phrase? So what are you not? If all of this, if you're getting a bit overwhelmed, it's a bit stressful, and you're like, oh God, I don't know who I am, I don't know what you are here, I don't know what you are there, then just get out a piece of paper and list what you are not. It's very easy to invert, and often talking about what we aren't can help us kind of lead, narrow the focus to what we are. So if you're building a little SaaS business, then you're not an e-com business, then you're not a direct-to-consumer, then you're not is it B2B or B2C? It's not B2C, it's B2B. Okay, then you're not doing this, and just like narrow it in. What is the opposite of the traditional method? So if you're trying to disrupt, or if you're trying to come in, then for instance, like I mentioned previously, that the industry method might be like to do 6 months worth of identity and build everything and be crazy and blah, blah, blah. And that's all lovely. But the opposite of that is what happens if it happened in 10 days? And then what if you took that, another Charlie Munger, he says, take a simple idea and take it very seriously. Like we take the 10 days extremely seriously, and we want to really play with that. Like what do we need to do to make the traditional method look silly, out of date and old? Like if you think about like back in the day for graphic design, there was like, you had to be a typographer, there was a printing press, there was an artist, there was a copywriter, there was like 18 people in one thing. Now you've just got a full stack creative that just does everything, right? The traditional method is out. Now that is probably now the traditional method. And now it's probably going to be that you also add into that it's generated by AI and whatever, who knows? And if they zig and they zag, and how can you zinger? Essentially, it's not the first time that anyone's built anything nowadays. You can have a zig over here, you can have a zag over there. People can be doing novel, different things. So you want to work out what do they got, and where can I find in the middle that I can do something that feels a bit like a zinger. Now, hopefully you like that. If you've still got questions, I'd love to hear them in the comments below. We can go back and forth or whatever, or it means I can do another one of these. So yeah, check us out. I hope this was of value. Thanks for watching. Whew, we made it.